If you can maintain that modified state of mind and body your entire day, get ready, because something unusual is going to happen in your life. That's the law. And when you begin to realize that you're no longer living by the old model of reality of cause and effect, something outside of you has to happen to change how you feel inside of you. And the moment you feel differently inside of you, you pay attention to whoever or whatever caused that. That's cause and effect. I have a few questions for you. How many people believe in the idea that the way you think has some effect on your life? That your thoughts create your reality? How many people believe in that idea? You do, yes? So then I have another question for you. How many people actually woke up this morning and consciously created a future? You know why most people don't do it? It's because you don't believe it's true. You see, if you knew that your thoughts had some effect on your destiny, that your thoughts created your life, would you ever miss a day in creating a future? Come on, think about this. If you knew that on a gut level, and would you ever let any thought slip by your awareness that you didn't want to experience? Now, your brain is organized to reflect everything you know in your life. Your brain is a reflection of your environment. It's an artifact from your past. So then you think 60 to 70,000 thoughts in one day. Out of those 60 to 70,000 thoughts that you think in one day, 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts as the day before. So then the same thoughts will always lead to the same choices. The same choices will always create the same behaviors. The same behaviors will produce the same experiences, and the same experiences will create the same emotions, and those same familiar emotions will drive the same thoughts. And that's called a personality. That's your identity. And your biology, your circuitry neurologically, the genes that you express are equal to that state of mind and body. So then, your personality creates your personal reality. That's it. And your personality is made up of how you think, how you act, and how you feel. So the present personality who's sitting here today has created the present personal reality called your life. So then if you wanted to create a new personal reality, then you would have to start thinking about the thoughts you've been thinking about and pay attention to them and decide if you want to bring those thoughts into your future. You would have to begin to observe your behaviors and your habits. And you would have to become aware of those emotions that you've memorized that are really just reflections of your past. So most people try to create a new personal reality as the same personality, and it doesn't work. You literally have to become somebody else. So if you believe in the idea that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, if you wake up every single morning and you get out of bed on the same side as you always do, and then shut your alarm clock off with the same finger as yesterday, slip into your favorite slippers, shuffle into the bathroom and use the toilet like you always do, look in the mirror to remember who you are, dress how everybody expects you to dress, go downstairs and drink coffee out of your favorite mug, drive to work the same way you always do, see the same people that push the same emotional buttons, do the things that you memorized and can do so well, then hurry up and go home, and hurry up and eat, then hurry up and check your emails, then hurry up and watch your favorite television show, then hurry up and go to bed so you can hurry up and do it all over again. Now here's my question. Did your brain change at all that day? We could say that you were thinking the same thoughts, performing the same actions, creating the same experiences that produced the same emotions, but you were secretly expecting your life to change. How many people are with me? So then there's a principle in neuroscience that says nerve cells that fire together wire together. So then as you're thinking the same thoughts every single day, your brain is firing in the same sequence, in the same pattern, the same combination. As you make the same choices that lead to the same behaviors, you're reinforcing the same circuitry and hardwiring your brain equal to your own volition. And if those same experiences produce the same emotions, now your body is getting the same chemical signature that keeps signaling the same gene in the same way. And so your biology, your neurology, your chemistry, your genetic expression is equal to your personality. How many people are with me? So then you would have to agree. Then as your brain fires in the same sequences, in the same patterns, in the same combinations, and you're doing that over and over again, and you're firing and wiring in your brain into that very finite signature, that finite pattern is called an identity. That's the box of the brain. And by the time you're 35 years old, we become a set of memorized behaviors, emotional reactions, beliefs, perceptions, and attitudes that function like an automatic computer program. So then, to make the brain work in new sequences and new patterns and new combinations, the one ingredient that allows us to do that is information. Because every time you learn something new, you make a new connection in your brain. That's what learning is. Learning is forging new circuits. Remembering is maintaining and sustaining those connections. So if you're here this weekend and you've removed yourself from the common stimulation of your life that reminds you of who you think you are, and you're learning this vital information, and as you learn this new knowledge and this new information, you're adding a new stitch into the three-dimensional tapestry of your gray matter. And as you begin to contemplate and think about what you're learning, you're making your brain work in new sequences and new patterns and new combinations. And whenever you make your brain work differently, you're changing your mind. Because mind is the brain in action. Mind is the brain at work. So then you would have to agree then. New thoughts should lead to new choices. New choices should lead to new behaviors. New behaviors should create new experiences, and new experiences should create new emotions, and new emotions then should inspire new thoughts, and that's called evolution. How many people are still with me? So then, does your environment control your thinking? Or does your thinking control your environment? Because as you wake up every single morning and you get out of bed and you see the same people and you go to the same places and you do the exact same thing at the exact same time to experience the same event as yesterday, we could say then it's your external environment that's turning on different circuits in your brain, causing you to think equal to everything that you know. And as long as you keep thinking familiar thoughts equal to everything that's known in your environment, and you told me that you believe your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, what are you creating more of? The same environment. To change. To truly change is to think greater than your environment. To think greater than the circumstances in your world. To think greater than the conditions in your external environment. And every great person in history knew this. Whether it was William Wallace, or Mahatma Gandhi, or Martin Luther King, or Joan of Arc, or Queen Elizabeth I, Madame Curie, the Wright brothers, they all had a vision. They all had a dream. They all had an idea, and it was much bigger than them. They couldn't see it, they couldn't smell it, they couldn't taste it, they couldn't feel it. It was beyond their senses. But they were so inspired by that vision that they began to live as if that future reality was happening in the present moment. They were ahead of their time. So can you believe in a future that you can't see or experience with your senses yet? But you've thought about enough times in your mind that your brain is literally changed to look like the experience has already happened? Neuroscience says it's absolutely possible. And can you embrace a future reality, a future potential that exists in the quantum field? And how many potentials exist in the quantum field? A few, infinite potentials. Can you emotionally embrace a future reality that you haven't experienced yet? And can you convince your body emotionally that that future event is happening to you in the present moment to such a degree that your body, as the unconscious mind, begins to believe that that future is happening to you? To the degree that you begin to signal new genes in new ways so that your body begins to change to look like the experience has happened? The epigenetic model of reality says it's absolutely possible. So if your brain and body are physically changed to look like the experience has already happened, there's physical evidence to look like the experience has already happened, relax. Because the experience is going to find you. And it's going to come in a way that you least expect. Now, why does it have to come in a way that you least expect? Because if you can expect it, it's nothing new. It's got to rock your world. It's got to catch you off guard, and it has to leave no doubt that what you did inside of you produced some result outside of you. And when that experience happens in your world and it comes in a new and unusual way, you'll pay attention to what you did and you'll do it again. And every single person in this audience, every single individual, independent of the color of your skin, your gender, your educational background, your culture, independent of your past or your social status, we all have the ability to create. Now, the hardest part about change is not making the same choice as you did the day before. Because the moment a person decides to pay attention to the thoughts that they've been thinking that have been hardwired programs in their brain that are happening behind the scenes of their awareness, and they become conscious of those unconscious thoughts. And they begin to notice their habits and behaviors. They become aware of the emotions that they've memorized that keep them connected to the past. The moment they're no longer going to think, act, and feel in the same way, they just went from the old self and they're heading to the new self. The problem is there's a void in between. And so when a person begins to change and they're no longer acting or thinking or feeling like the old self, they step into the river of change. And the moment they step in the river of change, they no longer feel like themselves any longer. And the moment they don't feel like themselves, it feels like an unknown, it's uncomfortable, it's unfamiliar. They all of a sudden make the same choice that leads to the same behavior, that creates the same experience, that produces the same emotion, and then they say, this feels right. No, that feels familiar. To step into the river of change and understand that to walk across that river from the old self to the new self, you are going to step into the unknown. And most people cannot get comfortable in that void because they can't predict their future. But that void is the biological, the neurological, the chemical, the genetic death of the old self. And I say the best way to predict your future is to create it. And when you are in that river of change, you are in the unknown, and that is the best place to create from. And so then crossing the river of change then means that you have to look at your brain and your body in terms of its hardwired programs and emotional propensities, and realize then that the moment you can change your brain and body to look like an event has already happened, your brain and body are no longer living in the past. Now, in fact, they are a map to the future. And to live by that law is to live by the quantum law. And the quantum law says that your environment is an extension of your mind. And if you truly change your mind, there should be evidence in your life. Why else would we do this? How many people are with me? Poke the person next to you, please. Give them a little poke. So every time you have a thought, you make a chemical. In Australia, if you have a great thought, or an unlimited thought, or a joyful thought, you turn on a set of circuits in your brain that fires in a very specific sequence, pattern, or combination that produces a level of mind that signals another part of the brain to make a chemical for you to begin to feel exactly the way you were just thinking, great or unlimited or joyful. But if you have a negative thought or a judgmental thought or a self-depreciating thought, you turn on a different set of circuits in your brain that fire in a different sequence, pattern, and combination that produces a different level of mind. It signals another part of the brain to make another batch of chemicals for you to begin to feel exactly the way you were just thinking, negative or judgmental or unworthy. Now, the moment we begin to feel the way we think, because the brain is in constant communication with the body, it's very natural that we begin to think the way we feel, which makes more chemicals for us to feel the way we think, and then we think the way we feel, and then we feel the way we think, and we think the way we feel, and we do this for 20 or 30 years. Thoughts are the language of the brain, and feelings are the language of the body. And how you think and how you feel creates a state of being. And a state of being is when mind and body are working together, or your thoughts and feelings are aligned to a destiny. So would you agree then that, I don't know, play with me, Australia. You think an insecure thought, in a matter of seconds, you're going to feel insecure. Yes? The moment you feel insecure, you're going to think more insecure thoughts. Yes? Which is going to turn on the same circuits in your brain to make the same chemistry for you to feel insecure. And the moment you feel insecure, you're going to think more insecure thoughts. And this could go on for 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years. Hardwiring the circuits in your brain and emotionally conditioning your body into that state. And if you do that long enough, you will say, I am insecure. And whenever you say, I am anything, you're commanding your mind and body to a destiny. Now, the repetition of this cycle of thinking and feeling and feeling and thinking over time conditions your body to memorize that state as well as your conscious mind. Now, 95% of who you are by the time you're 35 years old is a set of memorized behaviors, as I said, emotional reactions, beliefs, perceptions, and attitudes that function like a subconscious computer program. 95% of who you are. So when a person wakes up and they want to change, the cycle of thinking and feeling and feeling and thinking over time condition their body to become the mind of insecurity, become the mind of judgment, to become the mind of unworthiness, to the degree that the body does it without the conscious mind. And whenever the body knows as well as the mind, or the body becomes the mind, that's called a habit. A habit is when your body is your mind. So if 95% of who you are by the time you're 35 years old is a set of memorized habituations, and all of a sudden you're going to change, and you're going to think positively with the 5% of your conscious mind, but you've been feeling negatively for the last 35 years. Or You're going to create your dream board, with your SUV and your hair all styled and your fingernails, the dog in the back and the kid in the chair in the car seat all perfect. But if you feel unworthy, that's mind and body in opposition. We have to recondition the body to a new mind. So then in the process of change then, if you condition the body to become the mind, the servant has become the master. So then to change then is to be greater than your body. So then 95% of who you are runs like a subconscious, unconscious computer program. And so how do we get this way? Feelings and emotions are the end product of past experiences. And you can remember experiences better because you can remember how they feel. And when you're in the midst of an experience, everything you're seeing and smelling and tasting and feeling and hearing, all of your 5 senses plug you into the external environment. And when you're captured in an experience, all of that sensory information rushes back to your brain through those 5 different sensory pathways. And the moment that information reaches your brain, it causes jungles of neurons to begin to organize themselves into networks and patterns. The moment those neurons string into place, the brain makes a chemical. And that chemical is called a feeling or an emotion. So you can remember the birth of your child. You can remember graduating from college. You can remember a promotion. You can remember your wedding day. You can remember catching a fish off the coast of Brisbane with your 3 best friends and taking it home and cooking it for dinner and watching the sun set and drinking a really great glass of wine. You remember that event perfectly. The problem is you can't remember what you had for dinner the night before because routine lulls the brain to sleep. So think about this. If feelings and emotions are the end product of past experiences, and you're living by the same feelings every single day, and you can't think greater than how you feel, or feelings have become the means of thinking, are you thinking in the future or are you thinking in the past? Come on, let me hear that. And as long as you're thinking in the past, what are you creating more of? Same past reality. Now, the quantum model of reality is still working for you, but you're literally thinking in the past. Now, your body is your unconscious mind, and it does not know the difference between an actual experience in your life that creates an emotion and an emotion that you fabricate by thought alone. So if you're thinking and feeling and feeling and thinking in the same cycle for 20 or 30 years, your body as the unconscious mind is believing it's in the same past experience 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Your body literally is believing it's in the past. And if you condition your body to habituate and become the mind of that emotion, then your body literally is living in the past. And you can't create a new future holding on to the emotions of the past. How many people are still with me? So then when you react to someone or something in your life, when you react to something in your life, there's a refractory period of chemicals that are created from your emotional reaction. And if you don't know how to control your emotions in reaction to something outside of you, and you have an event that produces an emotion, and you allow that emotional reaction to linger for hours or days, you know what that's called? That's called a mood. What's wrong with you? I'm in a mood. Really? Why? What happened? Well, this thing happened to me 5 days ago. And I'm living by the same emotional reaction. And if you keep that refractory period going on for weeks or months, same emotional reaction, that's called a temperament. Why is he so angry? I don't know. Hey, why are you so angry? Well, this experience happened to me 11 months ago, and I'm memorizing my emotional reaction. Now, if you keep that same refractory period going on for years on end, that's called a personality trait. So then you would have to agree with me then, in order to change your personality, you would have to look at the emotions that you've memorized that keep you connected to the past. And for the most part, most people's personalities are literally living in the past. So then if the person is living by the same emotion because they've had an experience that happened to them 20 or 30 years ago, and that emotion is driving the same thoughts, and those thoughts are creating the same feelings, then that person literally, biologically is in the past. How many people are still with me? You with me? So now, middle-aged woman, she's living the life, she's married, she has a great life, and all of a sudden, her husband comes home and he announces to her that he's moving to Bali with his 2 secretaries. Now, this woman has an event that creates a strong emotional reaction, and she feels anger and frustration and jealousy and victimization and pain and suffering. And what she doesn't know is that every time she thinks of the event, she's producing the same chemistry in her brain and body as if the event is happening. And so she's experiencing that event 50 to 100 times in one day. And that emotional reaction begins to linger into a mood. And the mood begins to linger into a temperament. And she begins to tell the story equal to the emotion to all her friends, firing and wiring the same circuits in her brain, causing her brain to be imprinted into the past. And it lasts then for years on end, and those feelings drive the same thoughts, and she can't think greater than how she feels. And you approach her 20 years later, and you say to her, "Why are you this way?" And she says, "I am this way because of this experience that happened to me 20 years ago." Now, what that means biologically is I had an event that happened to me 20 years ago that altered me neurologically and chemically. And I haven't been able to overcome that emotion for the last 20 years, and I'm defined by that emotion. I'm basically living in the past. I stopped evolving from that particular event. How many people are with me? What that really translates into is I haven't changed. I don't know how to change. You with me? This doesn't have to be you. It could be anybody. So, another situation. Woman's living the great life. She has children. She's married to her husband. All of a sudden, her husband comes home and he says, "I'm moving to Buenos Aires with my 2 secretaries, and I'm bringing the milkman." Now, she goes through the same emotional reactions as the First Lady. She's angry, she's hating, she's frustrated, she's jealous, she's suffering. She does this for a period of few days. And all of a sudden, she has this thought. Living by these emotions isn't loving to me. And so she went to the Hay House event. She gets out her book. She starts reading about transformation and unconditional love. And she's going to cross that river of change. And she's going to weigh her old beliefs against some new beliefs. And she is going to go through the dark night of the soul. And she comes to this realization after studying and learning that unconditional love, if I truly loved my ex-husband, I would let him go and let him be free. And I don't want to live in the past any longer. And so she struggles to make that change. And she becomes conscious every time she's emotional, every time she's angry, every time she's judgmental. She becomes aware of every time she's thinking certain thoughts. And she's tempering the old self. And all of a sudden now, she decides to raise those children on her own. She goes to work in the day. She studies and goes to school in the evenings. She takes her kids to all the soccer games and the ballet, and years go by, and she gets a degree, finally graduates. Another year goes by, she gets a new job. 2 years later, she falls in love with the senior vice president of the company. They travel the world and they buy a house in the south of France. Her children graduate college, they get married and have grandchildren. They spend their summers in the south of France and they spend their winters in Melbourne. It works out well because of the equator. Now you approach that woman 20 years later and you say to her, "But your husband left you 20 years ago." What do you think she's going to say? "That was the best thing that ever happened to me." Because a memory without the emotional charge is called wisdom, and that's the name of the game here. So then, the person who frees themselves from the chains of the past has to go through the biological death of the old self. And when they cross that river of change and they begin to decide what thoughts they do want to fire and wire in their brain, and they pay attention to them, and they begin to decide what behaviors they're going to demonstrate in their life, and they begin to plan their actions and think about it, and they begin to set a sight for a new future, and they become aware that the emotions that they memorized are keeping them anchored to the past, and then they say, "I am not getting up until I am this person today. How would greatness live?" And they begin to teach their body emotionally what it is to be in joy. They begin to show the body chemically and instruct it what it feels like to live in gratitude with no evidence in their environment. Now we're talking about greatness. And so the person then who crosses that river of change understands when they arrive that they are going to have a new life. And it's going to be like they're reborn again in the same life. So then, if 95% of who we are by the time we're 35 years old are a set of memorized behaviors that run like an automatic program, thoughts and emotions that keep us anchored to the past, and your body is your unconscious mind, then 95% of our waking day, we're unconscious. So then to change then is to become conscious of your unconscious self. Would you agree? So then, if you keep thinking and feeling and feeling and thinking in the same cycle over and over again, and you get caught in that feedback loop, the emotions that are created from just that cycle keep signaling the same gene in the same way, and your body begins to break down. Now, poke the person next to you. Come on, Melbourne. You want to take a ride with me a little bit here? Come on, you're geniuses, right? You're geniuses? So then, your body's a protein-producing machine. You know that? Muscle cells make muscle proteins. They're called actin and myosin. Skin cells make skin proteins. They're called collagen and elastin. Stomach cells make stomach proteins. They're called enzymes. And when a gene is expressed, it makes a protein. You still with me? So if you take out one skin cell of your body and stretch out all that DNA, it'll be 2 meters tall. If you take out all the DNA out of your entire body and you stretch it out from end to end, it'll go to the sun and back 150 times. You take out all the DNA of every single body on the planet, the 7 billion people, all the DNA out of everybody's body, and you scrunch it all together, it'll fit in a grain of rice. Now, when they mapped the human genome, they were really disappointed because we express less than 1.5% of our DNA. The other 98.5% is called junk DNA. Out of that 98.5% of that junk DNA, that's a parts list of potentials. But in the 1.5% that you express, you are 98% chimpanzee. 70% rat, some more than others, but roughly 70%. Now, they used to say that your genes create disease. That's a lie. Less than 5% of the people on the planet are born with a genetic disorder. The other 95% is from lifestyle and choices. Now, then they said, it's the environment that signals the gene that creates disease. Well, that's good news. But how can two people, two factory workers, working side by side in the same factory, both exposed to the same carcinogenic chemical for 20 years, one gets cancer and the other doesn't? Certainly there must be some internal order in the body that can be greater than the conditions in the external environment. How many people are still with me? So then, when an organism is embracing adverse conditions in its environment, any organism, reptile, amphibian, mammal, as the organism is exposed to the harsh conditions in the environment, sooner or later, the organism changes its behavior to adapt to the conditions in the environment. If it changes its behavior, it's going to begin to have a new experience, and the new experience is going to have chemical information from the environment that's going to begin to signal the gene in a new way. And the exposure to the same experience over time begins to activate the gene, and the body begins to make a different protein. So if the organism is embracing very cold conditions, over time the organism will make thicker fur. Fur is a protein. If it's a predator chasing a prey, and the prey has to outrun the predator, by a series of exposures of that experience, the offspring will have longer legs. That's a protein. If it's current, the fish over time will develop a bigger tail fin, or camouflage. So then, how many potentials are there in a quantum field? So infinite potentials means there are infinite experiences, right? Come on, geniuses. Poke the person next to you. Come on, poke them. So then if there's infinite experiences, there are infinite emotions to experience. Would you agree? So then you would have to agree then that if you're living by the same emotion every single day, there's no new experience coming from your environment, and your body is getting the same chemical information because it's living in the past. And if you keep signaling that same gene over and over and over again, your body is going to begin to make a cheaper protein. It's going to begin to break down. And all aging is the result of improper protein production, because the genes begin to wear out just like gears in your car. Like taking a fax of a fax of a fax. So the new research says that you can signal new genes in new ways by thought alone. You can begin to upregulate certain genes that begin to cause the body to get healthy. And you can downregulate certain genes, shut them off by the chemicals of stress. You can take a group of people that are normal people, work in a corporation, and for 6 weeks you teach them how to relax, how to close their eyes, breathe, and become present. And they will signal over 1,600 new genes just by changing their internal state. You take a group of men that have prostatic cancer, and you teach them how to think differently, how to eat differently, and how to move differently. And they will turn on 200 new genes. Turn on new lights, turn off old lights. But if you're thinking and feeling in the same cycle, you're keeping the same lights on and the other lights off, and that same chemical redundancy pushes the genetic button that creates disease. How many people are with me? So then, since what the bleep, the most common question that people ask me is, how do you do it? How do you do this? And this is a time in history where it's not enough to know. This is a time in history to know how. And so when people begin to take this vital philosophical information and initiate that philosophical information into their life and demonstrate it to have a new experience, and they're able to reproduce that same experience, they go from philosopher to initiate to master. And we have people in our workshops around the world that have healed themselves of cancer, of diabetes, of lupus, of MS, of Hashimoto's syndrome, of rare genetic disorders that medical science had no solution for, because they began to realize very astutely then that the emotions that they memorized from their past, they weren't a bad person. They just got caught in that emotional loop, and they began to push the genetic button. And if they can turn that gene off, they should turn a new gene on. And over time, when they became a new personality, the disease no longer existed because it existed in the old personality. How many people understood? And they said, hey, you know what? Well, I gave up my hatred for my alcoholic father, and all of a sudden my acid reflux went away. I don't know what happened. Because they were no longer signaling the same gene. So what emotion have you memorized that keeps you connected to the past? Because your body, as the unconscious mind, is reliving that past event over and over again. And if you accept this paradigm as the truth, you would have to agree with me that no one or nothing is worth it. And even though it's justified, and even though it's reasonable, your body doesn't care. Your body is being enslaved into the past. And people say to me, well, what kind of diet do you eat? And I say, you want to go on the greatest fast out of all? Stop complaining. Give your body a break. Stop judging. And so a group of diabetics that can move into an elevated emotion and laugh for 1 hour can turn on 23 new genes that begin to regulate their blood sugar just by changing their mood. So then, what if you woke up in the morning and you said, hey, you know, I went to that I Can Do It event, and God, I learned a lot. Maybe I should try applying this to my life. So we have three brains that allow us to go from thinking to doing to being. You with me? Come on, poke the person next to you over there. So your thinking brain, 3 brains from thinking to doing to being. Each brain is its own individual biocomputer with its own neurology, with its own circuitry, with its own anatomy, with its own chemistry, its own physiology, its own history, and its own sense of time and space. Now, your first brain is called your neocortex. That's that corrugated walnut on the outside right here. It's the newest piece of neurological machinery. It's the largest in human beings and dolphins. And that neocortex is your thinking brain. You're listening to me right now with your neocortex. And your neocortex plugs you into the environment. And your neocortex is the seat of your conscious awareness. And it loves to learn information. And as I said, every time you learn something new, you make a new connection in your thinking brain. So you read the book by Wayne Dyer, and you get all this philosophical information. And then you get a little Deepak and a little Lisa Williams. You get all this knowledge. And then all of a sudden you get the companion CDs, and you're driving to work and listening to the CD now. You're firing and wiring all this information in your brain. You're philosophically, theoretically, intellectually, analytically beginning to fuse new circuits in your brain. You with me? But you got to keep reviewing it because learning is making the connections and remembering is maintaining it. So you got to go back and read it again and fire it and wire, and then get the companion CDs and you start making those connections, and then you start walking around in your office and you're saying, hey, you know what your problem is? You need to forgive. That's your problem. And you over there, you need to be more compassionate. Yeah, that's your problem. And listen, I learned about emotional intelligence. You got to shorten the refractory period of your emotional reactions. All of you over there. Everybody is just floored by you, and they're knocking on your door at work, and they're asking for you to administer to them and solve all their problems. And they're seeing you as psychic and smart. That's the philosopher. Now, when you take that intellectual information and you apply it, you personalize it, you demonstrate it, you initiate that information, and you do something with that information, you would have to agree then, the moment you do something differently, you're going to have a new experience. Would you agree? So you have a new experience then. When you have a new experience, you activate the second brain, called the limbic brain, the emotional brain, the chemical brain. So now, you've read the book on compassion. You've read the book on loving and surrender and forgiveness. And you've fired and wired these circuits in your brain, and everybody is impressed with you. And you are getting ready for the company Christmas party. And you get the call from your friend that the person who betrayed you, the one that threw you under the bus, that talked about you, that got the promotion, that swayed the company in another direction when you were entitled to that position, she's at the Christmas party. So you get the call, you hang up the phone, and you're staring out the window, and all of a sudden you start thinking about how you're going to poison her wine when you see her. Then you think, oh, no, I'm going to wait till she goes into the bathroom, and then I'm going to get her in a headlock, press her into the toilet. No, better yet, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to embarrass her in front of everybody. And you start going through all of these scenarios in your mind, and you're so focused on the scenario that your brain does not know the difference between the actual event and what you're fabricating by thought alone. You're living in that potential reality. And all of a sudden, you come back to your senses. And you say, I read the book on compassion. Damn it. Oh, I read the book on forgiveness. I'd heard the tape. And all of a sudden now, you back up and you become conscious of your unconscious thoughts. You begin to notice your knee-jerk reactions. You become aware of the emotions that are starting to stir in your body. And that concept in neuroscience is called metacognition. The fact that you can think about what you're thinking about means then you're no longer the program. You're the consciousness observing the program, and you begin to objectify your subjective mind. And as you begin to observe those thoughts, those behaviors, and those emotions, and you begin to become pure consciousness, the moment you become aware, you begin to quiet down the circuits in your brain that are connected to the old self. And nerve cells that no longer fire together, no longer wired together. You begin to silence the circuits connected to the old you. How many people are with me? And all of a sudden you get up and you start going, okay, what did I learn? What did I learn in the seminar? What I learned? Oh yes, I'm supposed to see myself in her. Blah. Okay, let me just come. Okay, I'm supposed to stay present. Oh yeah, stay present. Okay, open my heart. And as you begin to sit there in your bathroom and you begin to remind yourself of what you've learned, you begin to turn on new circuits in your brain, and you begin to plan your behaviors of what you're going to do when you walk into that Christmas party. And as you begin to rehearse mentally in your mind what you're going to do, nerve cells that fire together wire together, and you begin to make your brain work in new sequences and new patterns and new combinations. And whenever you make your brain work differently, you're changing your mind. And as you remind yourself of who you no longer want to be, and you remind yourself of who you do want to be, you are beginning to install the neurological circuits in your brain so you have the hardware in place so that when you walk into that dinner, you can turn on those circuits and get your behaviors to match your intentions, get your actions equal to your thoughts, get your mind and body working together. And so the research in neuroscience says that your brain does not know the difference when you're truly focused if you are rehearsing something in your mind, your brain will look like the experience has already happened. And so as you begin to prime your brain, now you get in the car and you begin to review what you're going to do. You begin to remember all the things you've learned. You begin to put yourself into the equation and you begin to rehearse your actions. And you walk into that dinner and you do exactly what the book says. And you walk up into that presence of that adversity. And you show up as somebody differently. And the moment your behaviors match your intentions and your actions are equal to your thoughts, and your mind and body are working together, the moment you're in the midst of that new experience, all of a sudden that new experience creates a new emotion. And all of a sudden your heart starts to open up, and the woman apologizes, and she breaks down, and you only have forgiveness and understanding. And the moment you feel compassion, the moment you feel forgiveness, the moment you feel love, you're activating that chemical brain, that limbic brain, that emotional brain. And now you are teaching your body emotionally to understand what your mind is intellectually understood. You see, knowledge is for the mind and experiences for the body. And in that moment, you are embodying knowledge. The word is becoming flesh, and you're literally signaling new genes and new ways because that's new information from your environment. But it's not enough to do it once. You can't forgive your coworker one time and expect to be on the stained glass windows at church. You have to be able to repeat that experience. And you have to be able to do it over and over and over again. You have to do it so many times that you neurochemically condition your body to memorize compassion as well as the conscious mind. And if you can continuously do it over time, you'll activate that third brain called the cerebellum, the seat of your subconscious mind, the home of skills and habits. It means that you've practiced it so many times that you no longer have to consciously think about it. It is who you are. It is innate in you. It means you've done it so many times that you know how, but you don't even know how you know how. Because the mind and body merge as one. Or better yet, the body becomes the mind of compassion, and now it's automatic. It's second nature. It's easy. It's familiar. It's who you are. And when you are in that state of being, we could say that you neurochemically conditioned your body to memorize such an internal chemical order or neurological order that no person, no thing, no condition in your environment can move you from it. And that's what we call a master. How many people are with me? So how many people here, as a side note, know someone who's mastered suffering? Doesn't have to be you, could be anybody. And you say to them, hey, did you read the book that I gave you? What do they say? Did you see the DVD? No. Hey, we're going out for some dinner, we're going to go see some stand-up comedy, we're going to go for a walk along the river, you want to come? What are they saying? I'm insisting on this neurochemical order that no person, no thing, no experience can move me from it. But greatness then, don't you know that when you decide to change, that if 95% of who we are is in that subconscious program in which the body is the mind, don't you know the body, the moment it's not getting its chemical needs met, is going to begin to go into chaos? And the moment you decide to change, don't you know, if you've been oiling those programs for 30 years and all of a sudden you're going to have a moment of enlightenment and you're going to say, today, no more complaining, no more blaming, no more making excuses. If you're Italian, no more self-pity. You're just going to stop. What do you think the body's going to say? 30 years of this. What do you think the body's going to say? Where you been, man? I've been doing this without you. You've conditioned and trained me to be this way. As a matter of fact, I can do this without you. You think you're making all your choices? You're not making any choices consciously. I'm influencing all your choices based on how you want to feel. I've modified my receptor sites for you. I'm doing exactly what you trained me to do. The servants become the master. And all of a sudden, the master's back on the throne and the servant's saying, hey, I got it. And don't you think that the moment your body is no longer getting those addictive chemicals, it's not getting its chemical needs met, it's going to send signals back to the brain? Remember, you declared, 2 hours earlier that you were not going to go there. And all of a sudden, 2 hours later, your body's getting antsy. It starts sending signals back up the central nervous system to the thinking brain. That's the fast track. And chemical levels of suffering is going down. And the hypothalamus, which is the thermostat in the brain, says she's not feeling like herself any longer. And it sends signals to the thinking brain. That's the slow track. Remember, you just said, I'm not going to be a victim any longer. And all of a sudden, you start to hear this voice in your head that says, why don't you start tomorrow? Tomorrow's a better day. Oh, look, I broke a fingernail. My day is ruined. You're too much like your mother. You'll never change. What's wrong with me? And of course, my favorite, this doesn't feel right. And the moment we respond to those voices as if they're true, consciousness immerses itself right back into the program. And we return to thinking the same way, acting the same way, feeling the same way, but secretly expecting our life to change. How many people are with me? So when you are in a state of being, because you've taken all this knowledge that you've learned at this little workshop, this little event, where you've retreated from your life long enough to no longer be reminded of who you think you are, to learn vital information, philosophical, theoretical information. And if you can repeat this information, it's installed in your brain. But the next question is, you got to integrate it into your life. You have to demonstrate it. And you can't go around saying, hey, I'm spiritual and peace be with you, then get in the car and like, hey, I gotta go. What's that? That's mind doing one thing and body doing something else. And I was invited to the government in northern Spain to do a talk to the government because Spain is going through such an amazing crisis. And there are 17 different ministries, and they asked me to present. I'm walking out into this culture, of course. I'm not part of the culture, but I looked out into the audience and I asked all these, important people. And there's a huge crisis in Spain, and I thought about what could I say to these folks. The first thing I said was, how are you contributing to the crisis? You know what? Let me tell you something. If there's a crisis, you're going to have to do exactly what's unnatural. When everybody else is afraid and is holding on, now it's time to give. When everybody else is judging, you show compassion. When everybody else is cynical and can't see possibility, you should be talking possibility. It will seem so unnatural. But how else do we become supernatural until we overcome what's natural? In every condition in your life is your initiation into greatness. You see, there are no schools of ancient wisdom on the hilltops of the Himalayas. You look in the mirror, you see a reflection of yourself. That's how the physical self knows who it is. But how does the ego, the immaterial self, know itself? And that is, you're initiated in your life. And you have to meet your life from a new level of mind every single day. And if you're not changing how you think and feel, and you get up as the same person, then you are thinking and feeling in the past. And there are no possibilities that exist for you. How many people are with me? So now, there's all this talk in the United States about intention, the power of intention. They did an experiment. They took a group of really expert prayers, and they put these people in front of 3 vials of DNA. And they said to these people, with all of your intention, that's, a thoughtful process. Intention, by the way, to demystify it, is getting clear on what you want. That's it. With all of your intention, we want you to see this DNA unwinding or rewinding. And just keep seeing it over and over again, unwinding and rewinding. And they did it over and over again, and at the end of the experiment, they checked the DNA, and guess what happened? Nothing. Intention or thought did nothing to change the DNA. So they said, okay, they took the same group of people, and they said, now we want you to move into an elevated emotion. We want you to feel joy and goodwill. We want you to feel gratitude. We want you to broadcast this energy into the field. And just keep doing it over and over again, and we're going to check the DNA. When these people moved into an elevated emotion, guess what happened to the DNA? Nothing. An elevated emotion didn't change the DNA at all. But when they said to these people, we want you to get very clear in your mind to see the DNA unwinding, and then we want you to move into the elevated emotion of how you would feel if the DNA actually unwound. We want you to give thanks for the DNA unwinding ahead of the actual experience. Guess what happened? 25% of the DNA unwound. You see, the thoughts that you think are the electrical charge in the quantum field. And the feelings that you emote are the magnetic charge in the quantum field. And how you think and how you feel broadcasts electromagnetic signature that influences every single atom in your life. The thought sends the signal out, and the feeling draws the event back. And how you think and how you feel is a state of being, and the quantum field responds to who you're being. So what are you broadcasting every single day? If you're walking around suffering and those emotions are driving certain thoughts, you're basically saying to the infinite field of possibilities, oh, great one, I am broadcasting the signature of suffering into the field. Bring me an experience to suffer more, but bring it in a way that I least expect. That surprises me, that leaves no doubt that it's come from you so I can suffer more. You see, we are not punished for our sins. We are punished by our sins. And karma happens every single day. So then, what if you woke up in the morning and instead of getting out of bed and doing the same thing you always do and thinking the same thoughts and planning the same predictable experiences at the same exact time that create the same emotions, that produce the same thoughts over and over again. What if you woke up in the morning and before you opened your eyes, you sat up and you said to yourself, what is the greatest ideal of myself that I can be today? One day, one lifetime. And what if you said, let me become conscious of those unconscious thoughts that undermine my greatness. And you said, like Gandalf on the bridge, you may not pass today. And what if you became aware of those habits and those behaviors that were so automatic that you didn't even think about them, and you began to become familiar with and conscious of those unconscious behaviors? And you became so conscious of them, you would never let them slip by your awareness that day. And what if you said, what are those emotions that bring me to a lower denominator? And you said, those emotions are just memories from the past, and I can't create a new future holding on to these emotions. A wealthy person doesn't feel lack. An opportunity doesn't feel like fear. You only create gold with gold. And you said to yourself, how would greatness live today? And you began to think, eliminate your environment, close your eyes, put your body away, and become so present in the moment that you're no longer predicting the same future based on the past. And what if you said, I am not getting up from my meditation this morning until I am this person? Now we're talking about a great person. And you wrestled with the old thoughts. And there came a moment where the body finally surrendered and relaxed. And like a great stallion who's bucking and kicking, that's the body, It's untrained. And every time it begins to buck and kick, you say to it, stay, stay. And you begin to fire and wire new thoughts in your brain. And you move into a new state of being, and you begin to teach your body emotionally what nobility feels like, what honor feels like, what abundance feels like, what love feels like. And you're signaling new genes and new ways, and you're changing the circuitry in your brain, so you're no longer living in the past, but now you're beginning to live in the future. And you get up broadcasting a whole new electromagnetic signature. And what if from that place, that new state of being, you began to create? And then you get up from your day, and your job is to maintain that modified state of mind and body your entire day, independent of the conditions in your environment, independent of the habits and addictions in the body, and independent of time. And if you could truly succeed at this, and that process turns into a mood, turns into a temperament, and into a new personality, if you can maintain that modified state of mind and body your entire day, get ready, because something unusual is going to happen in your life. That's the law. And when you begin to realize that you're no longer living by the old model of reality of cause and effect, something outside of you has to happen to change how you feel inside of you. And the moment you feel differently inside of you, you pay attention to whoever or whatever caused that. That's cause and effect. When my wealth shows up, then I'll be in gratitude. When my lover shows up, then I'll be happy and in love. That's the old model of reality. That's Newtonian physics of cause and effect. The quantum model of reality is about causing an effect. It's about changing how you think and feel to the degree that you're living in some future reality in the present moment, reorganizing the circuitry in your brain and signaling new genes in new ways so your body's already tasted the future. And now when that event happens in your life and you begin to see the effect happen, you're no longer living by cause and effect. You're causing an effect. And the moment it happens, you'll pay attention to what you did and you'll do it again. And that's called quantum physics. So if you're observing your life from the same level of mind every single day, you as the quantum observer are causing infinite fields of possibility to collapse into the same patterns of information called your same reality. So there's nobody who's so special in this audience that's excluded from this phenomenon. I was in Los Angeles, and I'm getting ready to do this talk, and there's a big audience like this, and here comes this lady kind of storming down, from the top, with her hands on her hips, and I'm setting up my computer, and I turn around, and I look at her, and she says, "How come I'm not living in Santa Fe, New Mexico with my 2 dogs?" I said to her, because the person who's living in Santa Fe, New Mexico with her 2 dogs looks nothing like that. So then, this is a time in history where we have to demonstrate all of this information. That there's an intelligence within you. So few people ever take the time to contemplate it. That there's an intelligence that's giving you life, that's both personal and universal. It's within you and all around you. Your heart is beating over 8 liters of blood a minute. Over 450 liters of blood in an hour. Over 100,000 times in one day through 100,000 kilometers of blood vessels. And your vascular system is 3% of your body weight. Who's doing that? Is your free-willed personality doing that? Or there's an intelligence that has a will so much greater than our will. And you're losing trillions of cells every single second. Oh, you just made another trillion. Are you making those trillion cells? or there is an invisible intelligence beyond space and time that's giving you life, that has a mind so much greater than our mind? And how about those days where you just hate life and you don't want to get out of bed? Don't you know there's an intelligence that's loving you enough to still give you life, that believes in you? Can't see it, can't smell it, can't taste it, can't feel it, but it is real. Because it is a consciousness, and consciousness is awareness, and awareness is paying attention, and it is observing you. So then when your will matches its will, and when your mind matches its mind, and when your love for life matches its love for life, it always answers the call. Because that intelligence, you have to develop a relationship with. And you have to begin to interact with it. And you have to say, I am emulating you as a creator today. I'm a child of God. But listen, I got to know that you're paying attention to my efforts and that you're real. So I'm tired of this one-way communication, some white guy on a cloud, pissed off at everybody, throwing lightning bolts at you because with a laptop keeping track of what you did wrong, right and wrong. It's the old model of reality. If you are a creator, then you have to call it out. And you have to say, I need evidence that you're real and you've been paying attention to my efforts. So if I am observing you and emulating you, you got to give me a sign. And you got to bring it in a way that leaves no doubt that it's come from you, so that I'm inspired to do it again. Because that same intelligence that's keeping your heart beating and digesting your food is the same intelligence that's causing planets to rotate around the sun and supernovas to be born in distant galaxies and a flower into bloom. So our job, then, what's our purpose in life? Our purpose in life isn't to be good or to please God or to be beautiful or to be rich. That's not our purpose in life. Our purpose in life is to begin to remove those layers, those masks, those habits, those emotions that block the flow of the divine in us. And when you and I begin to remove those layers, that intelligence that gives us life begins to leak out of us. It begins to consume us. Its nature becomes our nature. Its mind becomes our mind. Its consciousness becomes our consciousness. We become more giving because it's a giver of life. We become more conscious. It is a consciousness. We become more loving. It is a lover of life. And so then as we begin to remove those layers and that intelligence begins to express itself through us, we become more like it. And all of a sudden now, when you overcome some aspect of you and you freed yourself from the chains of the past and you are in love with life, there's only one thing you want to do when you feel that way. You want to give. And you say, I feel so incredible. Here, take this. I want you to feel the way I feel. And all of a sudden, we go from living a selfish life to a selfless life. And so this is a time in history where you and I have to demonstrate every single change you want to see in the world. And when you and I begin to work on changing individuals, we can change a culture. And so this workshop, this little event that you're at, is to inspire you to show up in your life differently. So that when you show up in your life and someone says, did you lose some weight? No. Did you change your hairstyle? No. Did you get a little work done? Mm-mm. Whoa, you look amazing. Because you're no longer living by those limited states of mind and body. And when you begin to demonstrate this in your life, you give people permission to do the same. Thanks for listening.